Okay, it's 6:30 at night. Chaim comes home from a long day at work, and he walks into the apartment, plunks himself down on the couch, and takes out the New York Times. Starts reading it. Okay, that will make it better. He takes out Mishnayos. Okay, takes out Mishnayos and starts learning Mishnayos. Okay, good. Meantime, his wife is in the kitchen, and she's cooking. And as the steam from the pot rises, the steam from her ear rises as well. Why? Because she's saying to herself, I don't believe this guy's going to sit there. The three kids are ripping apart the apartment. They're destroying the place. I'm slaving away, and he's just going to sit there. He's just going to sit and not do anything. He's just going to sit there. And as the steam rises, her inner steam rises, and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter until finally she's had it. She puts down the towel, walks into the living room, points a finger at him and says, all right, mister, up off that couch. You're either cooking dinner or you're taking care of the kids, but you are not sitting there any longer. So he dutifully obeys, gets up, takes care of the kids, and lo and behold, they put the kids to bed after. Everything is fine and well. Now, folks, was she correct? So most women would say she's heroic. She's great. She deserves a medal. Finally stands up and says what's right. And I think everybody will agree that he's a creep. If your wife is slaving away and the kids are ripping apart the apartment, get up off the couch and do something, right? So everyone would agree that she is right in feeling he's acting like a creep, and everybody will agree that he's acting like a creep. However, at the same time, I'd also like to share with you that she did something very, very damaging to her marriage. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Okay, they bathe the kids, they put them in, and finally it's quiet time after, and Chaim's sitting there, and his wife decides she wants spend a little time with the husband, so she sits down right next to him, and he kind of like moves away. So she moves a little closer, and he moves away further, and she moves closer and he moves further, and for the life of her, she can't figure out what's the problem. Why is he distancing himself? What's the problem? Would you like to know what the problem is? The problem is, for the past 2 hours, like a tape in his brain has been playing, all right, mister, up off the couch. You're either cooking dinner or you're taking care of the kids. All right, mister, up off that couch. You're either cooking dinner or making the... All right, mister, up off... For 2 hours, it's been playing in his brain over and over and over until he reaches the obvious conclusion. I married a drill sergeant. And guess what? Nobody wants to be real cozy with a drill sergeant. So this is the point. She is right, and yet she did something very damaging to her marriage. He is wrong, and yet they're not in a good place. And therefore, what I'd like to share with you is what's essential for a successful marriage, besides everything else, is something called communication. Now, communication is not, get up, you stop it, you left the socks again, that's not communicating. Not at all. That's not at all communicating. See, ideas are information. Communication is a method of getting across the message to another human being. And I'd like to share with you some yesodos about communication. First, we're going to start with requests, and then we're going to deal with complaints. How do you make a request of your spouse? And then we're going to deal with how do you complain about your spouse, to your spouse, etc. So let me begin with the following. Here's a question. I want you to answer this question in your own mind. I ask only one thing. Don't raise your hand. Don't blurt out the answer. I ask that when I ask the question, you answer it. Here's the question. You ready? Question is, in your marriage, who is the boss? Who's the boss? Who is, don't answer out loud. Please, ladies, it's going to be very ugly. No, don't do this. In your mind, with your mouth closed, please answer this question. In your marriage, who is the boss? Okay, everybody got a good answer? Okay, I'm going to give you the right answer. In your marriage, you know who the boss is? No one is the boss. Equal partners. Different roles, but equal partners. You are partners together. When you went under that chuppah, it wasn't to take on a master. It wasn't to take on a boss. It wasn't to take on someone who's in charge. And even though that may sound funny, it's not funny at all. Because there are so many times when husbands and wives take on this role as, listen, I'm in charge of this area. I'm in charge of this. This is my domain. And I'm the autocrat here. I'm the one who will unilaterally decide. And if you don't think I'm right, just watch carefully. Here, I'll give you a little exercise. If you ever say to your husband, you know, I decided to invite your brother and wife and kids for a week, okay? You ever say to your wife, you know, I hired a painter to paint the downstairs because the place was really looking terrible. You ever find yourself saying something like, we're going to my parents for Shabbos, we're going to go here for Pesach, we're going. So I'll show you what I mean. I have a little exercise. From now on, precede those words with the following. What do you think about? What do you think about? You see, if no one's the boss, then everything are questions. Now listen, there may be certain areas that we both agree, certain areas that you should be in charge, I should be in charge. A woman asked me an interesting question. She said, in her family, she is in charge with finances, and her husband's fine with it. Is that okay? I said, fine. Listen, if that's in your family, if that's how it's working out well, and there is no issues, then that's fine. And by the way, it is a very wise person. My Rabbi, the Shafier Zatzal, used to say over and over, men stay out of the domestics. A house is a woman's domain. It represents her. Why is your wife so embarrassed when the place is a mess? You ever notice that your place can be pretty clean, but it's a little bit something, and your wife is hugely embarrassed? Because the house represents her. It's her domain, it's her area, and it represents her. Gentlemen, stay out of the domestics. Ladies, stay out of the ruchnius. I'll tell you a little story that's very interesting. There was a fellow in the Kollel in Chavetz Chaim who, they made that kind of arrangement. And after a few years of marriage, his wife, everything was going well, except for some reason it bothered her one of the Shafier Zatzal's shittas. The Shafier had a particular shitta about soda caps on Shabbos, and it bothered her. And for a good number of times, she would ask her husband, and it really bothered her a lot. And apparently at some point she said, you know, she was dead already. Come on, a couple of years. I mean, he was talking about metal soda caps. These are plastic soda caps. How do you know it still applies? How do you know it still applies? Anyway, she decided that I'm taking the bull by the hands, by the horns. She took out a English Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa and started learning through the whole sugya. He didn't say a word. She learns it page after page after page. He didn't say anything. The next morning, she comes down and finds in the living room, the couch is over here, the chair is over here, the whole place is rearranged. And she says, Moshe, what's going on? What's with the living room? He said, listen, remember when we got married, we agreed we're going to follow the Shiva. I was going to stay out of domestic, she was going to stay out of ruchnius. So I see that we're no longer doing it. So I tell you the truth, I always thought the couch really belonged here. And needless to say, it was the end of the soda cap issue. So here's the point. It is a wise couple who follow certain guidelines. And if in your own family you find that it's better for your wife to take care of this, the husband to take care of that, and they make the unilateral, one-sided decisions, that's fine. But you see, it's by agreement. You've both agreed that you're in charge of this. But no one becomes the autocrat to take over, to take charge of it, and etc. Okay, so that's number one. Before we start, number one. Now, number two, this is one of the most important things to think about. How do you argue as a friend? Right? Let's say you have an issue you're going to bring up with your husband, with your wife, and you know that it's going to be a contentious issue. It's going to be one of those hot issues. Here's the question. How do you argue as a friend? Anyone know the answer to that question? I guarantee you don't know the answer to that question. Why? Because you cannot argue as a friend. The minute you're arguing, you're adversarial. You're no longer a friend. Now, don't get me wrong, friends argue. Friends could argue all the time, but when you're arguing, you're not acting as a friend. You're acting as an adversary. You're acting as one against. How do I know I'm right, by the way? I can solve 50% of all arguments in every marriage in this country. 50%. Want to know how? A very simple thing. Husband and wife arguing, yes, okay, good. Time out, stop. Change positions. You, sir, I want you to argue her position. Madam, I want you to argue her. Okay, I'll argue her position. She's saying that, what are you saying? Yeah, and what are you saying? You ever notice when you're arguing, you don't even hear the other person. You're not listening, you're not attuned. And this is the first yesod before you're going to make a large request. Let's make it very simple. Let's imagine for a minute there's something that's really important to you. I'll give you one example. You want to go away for the summer. You want to go to the bungalow, and money's tight, and you've discussed it with your husband, etc., but you've had it. The kids are driving you crazy, and it's just beyond, and you really feel it's important. How do you do that? Rule number one, you are approaching as a friend, as best friends who love each other. Now, ladies, I may get in big trouble for revealing this secret. And if you think I'm kidding, I'm not. This is one of those really, really powerful secrets that works amazingly. The next time you want something from your husband, say these words. You know, Maisha, I just want to tell you, this is very important to me. It's really, it's important because it's this and it's that, and it's really important to me. Listen, at the end of the day, if it can't be done, I understand, but I just want you to know it's very, very important to me, and I trust your judgment. Oh! Do you know how powerful that is? Do you know how powerful? I'll tell you how powerful it is. I do not smoke cigars. I don't. I don't smoke cigars. I used to love cigars. In fact, as a Rabbi in Rochester, we'd often drive into New York as a 5-hour trip. I'd start out with a big, long, fat cigar. My kids, when they were real little, used to say, after 3-4 hours, the cigar gets shorter and shorter. But what happened to your cigar? I used to smoke all the time and I used to love it. One day, my wife said to me, it's not so good for your health, it's a little dangerous. And I said, I don't know if it's not like cigarettes, etc. She said, please stop, do it for me, please. Ooh, 22 years later, I haven't touched a cigar. Even Castro died. Cuban cigars now, I won't touch a cigar. Why? Had she said, one, it's bad for your health, stop it, you better not do it, I'd be smoking today like a chimney. Please do it for me. Ooh, nasty, underhanded, devious, deceitful. Okay, ladies, do you hear what I'm saying? What I'm saying to you is that if you're going to use a little bit of wisdom, Isha Chachma bin Sabesa, there's a very wise woman who once said, the man may be the head, but the woman's the neck, and the neck can make the head turn any way it wants. Let your husband think he's in charge, especially on the little stuff, Let him have his way, let him have it, and on the big stuff, you'll be able to mold him like putty. Now, will this work every time? No, it's not going to work every time. First of all, there are two people in this union. But number one, I guarantee it'll be much more effective than what you do now, and it also will not hurt your shalom bayis at all. You see, what you're doing is, as a friend, you're approaching your friend and saying, this is important to me. I'm expressing my needs. I'm telling you what I need. If it can't be done, I understand. But if it can be, that'd be great. Women, it's usually significantly effective. Gentlemen as well. And that's how you approach a very big question. You're coming as a friend, and the words you're saying are, if it can be done, and again, ladies, if you could say the words because you're dealing with a male ego, if it's, I trust your judgment. Whoa, I trust your judgment. Woo! I trust your judgment. Wow. Wow. If you could say it with a straight face. Assuming you could say it with a straight face, you have no idea what you just bought. Inside, he's smiling. She trusts my judgment. She trusts my judgment. She never did before. She was questioning everything. How I drive, how I walk, now she trusts my judgment. Okay, but assuming that he really believes it, you will have bought yourself so much goodwill, be such a desire. Don't you understand? Gentlemen love to be heroes. Guys love to come up to the plate and really shine. Give your husband a chance to do that, and you'll do much better. So number one, you're coming as a friend. And so when you're doing little requests, it's always preceded by the words, what do you think about? It's not a unilateral decision. It's not a command. It's a, what do you think about? When it comes to a big request, you say it as a friend, I feel, I need. It's very important to me. If it can be done, it'd be great. And again, if you could add the words, I'll trust your judgment, it's even better. But again, it's as a friend.